Welcome to the Nintendo Watcher Podcast. I'm Justin, joined as always by my co-host Matthew. Matthew, how's it going?
Hey, Justin, how's it going, man? Good to see you again.
It's good. And we've got a special guest with us today, certified Pokemaniac Jeremy Rivers. Jeremy's an artist and one of the hosts of the pop culture podcast GenMix. I'll link his pod in the social profiles in the description below. Jeremy, thanks for joining us. It's always good to talk to you. You're the biggest Pokemon fan I know, so I'm really happy to have you on this episode to talk about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. How's it going?
Yeah, thanks. I'm doing great. I also just love the name of this podcast, by the way. And I went back and tried to figure out which ones I could listen to because there's a lot of games that you guys cover that I haven't even touched. But when it comes to Pokemon, I am through and through a fan since 1998. So I got you covered on that part.
You're
That's
in
what we
good
like to
company
hear.
then, yeah.
We need more people that know what they're talking about, right? More people to teach us what's what, because we are, we know some stuff, but we've got blind spots, and it's helpful to have a certified expert in the room, especially for this conversation, I think. So excited to hear what we got to talk about today.
Yeah, I always love going over the new Pokemon games. And this thing has only been out for what, a week now? Maybe pushing 2. But I've had a lot of fun with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Justin, do you want, should we start a little bit further back, just history with the franchise a little bit? I mean, we've already established, Jeremy, your credentials dating back to 1998. Myself, an original, adopter with Pokemon Blue, eventually had a red cart as well. A grass type starter for every generation, and I've been around the block for most of the series. Justin, what about you? I know you've got kind of an up and down relationship, but did it start back at red and blue? I can't recall.
Yep, started back in red and blue. I had blue too. I don't think I ever got a red cartridge actually, but actually my very first experience with Pokemon, I was staying over at a friend's house for the weekend and he had red and he didn't care about it.
Nice.
So I grabbed his Game Boy and started playing it, and we were there for his birthday party, spent the whole weekend there, and I couldn't pull myself away from this Game Boy he had. I played through like hours and hours and hours of red, and then I begged my mom to get me a copy of blue for myself. So yeah, it started way back at blue for me. Then I got into silver, and silver just did everything that blue did, but better. And then the inclusion of Kanto at the end, I absolutely loved it. And then I fell out of it really until the pandemic. And I went back and tried to purchase all of the old ones and didn't realize how expensive they were. So at this point, I've played through all of them except the Black and White 2 generation. I never could get through those. I don't know why. Something about them just didn't feel right. But I've played all the other ones up until then.
Okay. And Jeremy, where are we at? I know you said 1998 is where it all started, but let's get a little series, overview from your personal experience, favorites, starters, all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, so definitely back in 1998, I was trying to think about it earlier when I would have first been introduced to it. And I think it would have been through daycare because I went to daycare for a long time, like probably too long. My mom and dad had 3 kids. They worked full time. We all did extracurriculars and had things to do. But in 1998, I would have been in daycare still, about 7 years old, and watching the series first and seeing that first episode of Pokemon I Choose You with Ash and Pikachu. Like, I was sold. I was done. I needed to have everything Pokemon related all the time. But I actually had blue. I think I had blue first and red because typically earlier on, my mom would be like, okay, well, if this, I have an older brother, I'm in the middle, and a younger sister. And she would say, well, if one boy gets it, the other one has to get it because they're going to be fighting over it. So she bought red and blue. My brother had no interest at all. So I lucked out and got both. So I was playing blue at one time, and typically I start with a water starter. So usually I would go with Squirtle. There are some honorary mention grass types in there, but typically it's water type for me. But actually, the game that I got first was blue and red. And then that same year in 1998, in Christmas, I got Pokemon Yellow. And when Yellow came out, the other 2 were dead to me. And I just only played Yellow.
That was a great game.
Yeah.
And really
that
lets you like
Pikachu.
follow in Ash's footsteps, right? Like getting the Pikachu, getting the other starters throughout the quest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like you feel like you're, especially if you watch the anime or the cartoon, like you can literally walk through and do everything that he did. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it hooked me very quickly.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because you mentioned the show as your starting point. And for me, that was the same experience. In fact, you're describing your history with it. And I'm thinking back to being, 1988, being 11 years old in, what was that, 6th grade, I think, hanging out after school at the, the after school, programs, because same thing, family worked. There was 3 of us. We hung out there, and that's what we did. I had an old it's like the teal green
Oh,
Game Boy, and I had a friend who owned red with the link cable, and got my first Gengar right after school, hanging out on the school playground, and that was kind of it for me. Right at that point, I was kind of I was locked in, but it was the show that I think locked me into that, and I wonder. This is just speculation, but did part of your decision to choose a water type starter, come from the fact that, I mean, clearly Squirtle was the star of the original series, in my opinion. I mean, did that factor in at all?
it may have swayed me a little bit, but I honestly I like I go for the design and the aesthetic of the Pokemon too. So like I usually try to play with my favorites and what they look like. And Squirtle just was, see, it's so weird because now if I had to do it all over again, and I have done it over again several
Yeah.
times, I would probably go with Bulbasaur because Bulbasaur is
Yes.
arguably the cutest
The
starter
king.
out of all of them, and just such a good boy. Like he's
Yeah.
he's 100% good boy,
He's still my
and
favorite Pokemon, bar none. So yes,
yeah, the fact that we haven't seen a regional variant of any of them has upset me.
atrocious oversight.
Yeah. But no, I love all of them. Obviously, Charmander is up there. He's probably one of the more popular starters,
Mm-hmm.
and people love their Charizard. But Squirtle was just more fun, and I loved him with those little glasses in the show and just being a troublemaker. So maybe that had something to do
Yeah.
with it.
Justin, you're. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that original trio of starters had like really good, even mid-evolution
Yes.
Pokemon. Like Wartortle is my favorite Pokemon of all time. But I like Squirtle, I like Blastoise, but it was really I don't know. They really stood out. Now you get to like a mid-evolution, it's just like, okay, this feels like a placeholder for a while. But those early Pokemon really felt like they put a lot of passion into those designs for the mid levels.
Definitely. Nowadays, it's like the mid evolutions are sort of that angry teenager phase, and it's just they're either awkward or they're kind of cool, and there's not really a 100% great line all the way through.
Not to tip my hand too much, but as a grass starter aficionado, I will say that I think this is a return to form for grass starters. Finally, I do think Scarlet and Violet. I think the Sprigatito to Masquerada through line is solid all the way through. But we'll get to that when we get to Scarlet and Violet. I've got a couple more questions I want to kind of run through with just series history, laying some of the scene setting before we jump into the most recent game, because I do think it's really important to establish where we're coming from when we get into that conversation, because I think things might take a slight turn in the second half of the discussion. But how are we how do we consider ourselves as far as players of Pokemon? Are we gym rushers? Are we collect them all players? Do we battle for max training, for max IVs, EVs, all that fun stuff? Where do you find yourself in when it comes to approaching the way that you play these games? Jeremy, why don't we go ahead and start with you, since you're the guest here? Are you a more hardcore Pokemon player, or is there a system that you follow?
No, I'm definitely all about the immersion of the experience. So I love just getting the game and really, especially once they introduce character customization and you can figure out what you want yourself to look like. I really buy into that. So I sort of play it as if I were dropped into the world and I was just exploring, and I don't really follow, especially with this game. I don't really follow a set path.
Yeah.
I don't try to do the completionist run from the beginning. I do like to catch all the Pokemon, and I like to get all the dex entries, and just for like casual play, because I will pick it up after work and just run around for a little while. And I like trying out different teams. But when it comes to like a brand new game starting out, I usually pick a starter and then go through the gym line. With these later iterations of the franchise, they've been trying to figure out things that are not just so do the gyms, catch them all, done. So I appreciate that, but it's very casual for me.
Yeah. Justin, how about you?
We've talked about how we play games before. We've got an entire podcast about it. And I approach Pokemon the same way. I always start as that completionist. Like I'm going through a route and I've got to get every single Pokemon that's on that route. So I start that. I do it for the first 5 or 6 hours, and then I just blaze through the gym route. It's just, I like catching the Pokemon. I really like filling out the decks. The past few generations, I've been really, just cognizant of trying to catch them when I see them if it's something new. I think it's gotten a lot harder. As Pokemon have just become part of the overworld, a lot of them are really small. It's kind of hard to see them unless you're going by a guide or something. So I probably less like that now, but I like to catch them all. That's sort of my go-to philosophy on Pokemon games. What about you, Matthew?
Yeah. I mean, I think we all approach this relatively similarly. My thing is I try to build, a strong starting team, right? I want to collect a team of 6 early on, one that I feel is pretty balanced as far as type, matchups and stuff go. So I'll spend a little extra time early until I've got like my gym team, right? So I'll do as much as I can in, the games that allow you to do a little more. Like the nice thing about Scarlet, Violet, Arceus and all that is gave you a little bit more flexibility in the early gyms to go build out a strong, diverse team. Earlier games, you were kind of limited in type options before the first gym, but I think they've done a better job lately. So that's kind of my move. Get a nice little team of 6, and then it's hit a gym, complete the gym, move to the next town, build an entirely new party of Pokemon from that area, right? A new team of 6, level them up just enough to take on the gym. Next gym, same thing. Each gym, it's a repeat. I get to the next gym, grab 5 new Pokemon because I never leave my starter. That's I will die on that hill. 5 new Pokemon, new team, next gym, and then we just do that until the end game. At that point, I turn around, I go collect them all, do the end game, content. But I am, it's basically gym to gym with just a quick, 30-45 minute break to collect a whole new team right before I jump into the gym.
I had no idea you were such a monster.
I know.
That's insane. I don't think I could commit to getting rid of half my team essentially every single gym, because I get so like, okay, real quick question. This wasn't in the notes at all, but do we nickname our Pokemon? Because I do.
Nope.
All of mine are nicknames.
I'm a hardcore, just their name, no nicknames. I've been since Gen 1. I don't know why, because I do get very attached, right? Like I said, my starter never leaves. I never leave my starter. Even at endgame, they're still in my team, even if they're garbage. But I don't name them. I just never have.
I really dig deep into, I think I spent too long trying to come up with a name for them, because like when I first got this game, I was already seeing which Pokemon I was going to play through and what I would name them.
Yeah.
And for an example, sometimes they're really like digging into the history of like where the Pokemon was created, what they're based off of, whatever. For like Espeon is probably my go-to favorite Pokemon, and I can prove it because I have a mouse pad that has Espeon on it.
A great Pokemon.
I made.
So, you made that?
I did. That's one of my favorite designs that I've ever done.
That's awesome, man.
But I looked into the history of that, and Espeon is based off of a Finnick fox. So I was like, okay, your nickname's going to be Finnick. But then there's the flip side where they're just stupid. And I have all 3 starters in the new gen, but the Quaxley, the little duck, I ended up hatching a female, and I named her Quaquafina.
Beautiful.
Because it's so dumb, but she looks like a drag queen to me. So I'm just like, this is a drag queen Pokemon.
Love it. I usually don't nickname mine, but I have so many Blastoise that I've named Admiral over time. Like if I get a new Blastoise, I always go with Admiral or some sort of
Yeah.
Navy uh, rank. But usually I don't name them because it takes too long. But I like your system, Jeremy, of like, what's the history of this Pokemon? How do I trace it back to something real rather than just naming it like Bob or something like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is fine too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with naming. I will name Pokemon that I intend to trade. I'm that monster who will put a ridiculous name on any Pokemon I trade.
You're the person that
So,
I hate when I get a random trade. I'm like, I can't name it's a shiny and it's a
Yep.
female with a good nature
Yep.
and it's named Steve and I
I'll
can't do
give you
anything about this now.
I'll give you a great trade. I'm a nice trader, but I'm going to give it a stupid name, and that's just that's the rule. Now, again, exceptions. Obviously, if I'm trading with Justin, I'll let him. I'll give him just the standard. Whatever it is. But if I'm doing random trades and stuff, my bad. I'm that guy. I get a kick out of it. It makes me laugh every time. So that's
You're the worst.
But I got one more question before we get into our actual topic of conversation today. And this is just one, again, it's not in the notes, so this is kind of just off the top of your head. Favorite Pokemon type. Where do you fall on this? I'll go first just to give you guys some time since I'm throwing a curveball at you. Fairy type Pokemon. Fairy type, it has nothing to do with matchup or anything like that. It's that I think design-wise, they knock it out of the park 9 times out of 10 on fairy type Pokemon. They're good. They're solid Pokemon. A lot of the moves are very good. They've got some really good matchups that I think are a benefit to the type. So there is that element, but it's all about the design for me. And I think fairy types kind of really just do a great job.
Yeah,
or Jeremy, if you've got it, let's go.
I was just gonna agree. Like I love the fairy type, but it's a toss up for me between psychic and poison.
Yeah.
Just because I think poison types usually have that sort of edge to them, but they always come off as these like dumb little babies in the game.
Yeah.
And the psychic ones just end up looking kind of cool towards the end. And obviously Espeon, I'm biased, but
yes.
Poison, I think my top 3 are psychic, poison, and electric. Those are my top 3.
Yeah. Justin, where are you at on this?
I like psychic Pokemon too. Also like dark Pokemon. Like Sableye is one of my favorite Pokemon ever. I just think his design is awesome and the way he runs
Umbreon.
and the new animations and stuff is so good. Yeah, probably either that or water. So those are my top 3. Psychic, dark, water's the boring one. But there's so many great water Pokemon. Golduck and Psyduck. I love that line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if I were to do a top 3, since you guys did, I'll just go. It's going to be Fairy, Ghost, and Grass are the 3.
Oh, I forgot about Ghost. How could I forget about Ghost?
Ghost Pokemon are just solid too. They're another one. I mean, right now I cannot get enough of Cerulege in Pokemon Violet. Loving it. One of my favorite Pokemon additions in the new generation. I think across the board they're another one where they've just got solid designs. Plus, always been a fan of the Ghastly Haunters and Gengars of the series. So, but we've been doing some table setting. We're at about 20 minutes now, and I think it's a good time as any to jump into what we're really here to talk about, which is Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the most recent addition to the franchise, and a game that the 3 of us have been playing quite a bit over the last 2 weeks. Just to get a sense of, where we're all at here. What versions did we go with? What starters did we pick and why? Jeremy, let's go ahead and let you start on this one.
I went with Scarlet and I picked Fuecoco, which is going against my typical water starter.
Yeah.
But I picked him because before we knew what his final typing was going to be, I had sort of guessed he was going to be like a ghost pepper sort of thing because his face looked like a little skull. So I was like, maybe he'll be the first fire and grass starter, or at the very least, fire and ghost. So I was like, I think I'm going to get Fuecoco. I'm going to name him Reaper, which is what I did. And then Ghost Pepper. That's why I picked him.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. And it worked out as far as I can tell. I mean, you got your typing, you got your Fire Ghost. Also, I think anytime they can keep a Pokemon on all fours in their final evolution, great. Justin,
That's
where'd
the
you go?
literal only reason I didn't pick Sprigatito, because I knew it wasn't going to happen.
Never is with the cats. It's always disappointing.
Yeah.
So Justin, where'd you land?
I went with the Grass Cat. Yep.
Good.
I like had Matthew's voice in the back of my head saying, "Go with a grass type." So I did, but it took a lot though. I kept going back and forth trying to decide. After I've seen some of the Quaxley evolutions, glad I didn't go that route.
Yeah,
it's probably my least favorite of the three. But yeah, so I went with the Grass Cat, and I got Scarlet. I think I'm the only one on the call who got Scarlet. You guys?
No,
Jeremy got Scarlet as well. I am the only Violet. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, that's good, because I actually do want to talk about the end game with that later on, because I am curious about your guys' thoughts there. But I know we had talked about it. I think part of you getting Scarlet was that I told you I'm getting Violet, and that's the end of story. So there was that.
That's exactly what happened, because otherwise there's a little bit of peer
pressure on that, and I will take the blame for that. But I went with Violet because I prefer the coloring, and I prefer the legendary in Violet, and a couple of the exclusive Violet Pokemon I wanted. And so that was kind of the decisions there. Pretty easy. Sprigatito, again, I'm going grass type every time. I've done it since Bulbasaur in Gen 1, and I haven't changed since. I always do, replays, and I'll go check out the other starters, but I'm always going to go through with a grass type on my first playthrough. So that's where I went, and that's what I landed on. And so that kind of gets me into the topic of conversation. Initial impressions. We've spent some time with it. Before we jump into like the base initial impressions of the game, how far are we at this point, so that we've got a baseline for where our critiques or praise is coming from? Where are we each at? I'll start. I have completed the main story. I've done everything to roll credits, and now I'm on, I've just started the end game stuff. So I haven't done any of the repeat battles or legendary hunts just yet. I'm right there though. Justin, why don't we go with you next? We'll end on Jeremy, because I'm curious to see where he's at. But Justin, where are you at right now?
I'm through the first 5 gyms.
Okay.
And I've done 4 of the Titans to make traversal a little easier.
Yeah.
And I've done maybe 3 or 4 of the Team Star raids.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, like it feels like I'm pretty far.
Yeah.
And I'm not really going on one route specifically. I'm just sort of doing it as I come across it. So yeah, that's about where I am.
Yeah, probably like 70% maybe. Seems about right. Yeah, I think there's 8 gyms total. Right, yeah, you're probably about 70% of the way, maybe a little more. Jeremy, where are you at? How far have you gotten? What are you working on right now?
I am similar to you. I've finished the main story literally last night. I didn't intend on playing as long as I did, but I stayed up and finished out the storyline for the main quest, and I'm in the post game now. Mm-hmm. I've only went back and battled one gym leader.
Yeah.
And that was just sort of because he was there situation. But now I've started going back, and I'm trying to, if a Pokemon pops up and I haven't caught it, now I'm going through and catching all of those.
Yeah.
So
that part has really slowed my progress down. If I'm like, do I have one of you? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Spend 30 minutes trying to capture this Pokemon.
And that was, like I said, I wait till after the credits roll to do most of that. So similarly, I kind of rushed the main 3 paths, which brings me to my next question. We've talked about where we're at. We've talked about, why we chose the version. So initial impressions on the gameplay changes. What do we feel about the design philosophy, the new Pokemon? Do we have any favorites? Do we have any things about the new setting, or, changes to the story direction, the open world elements that we're really vibing with? We can really go any direction here. I just kind of want to give you guys free form to talk about your thoughts overall. We can kind of focus on, a more streamlined gameplay discussion in a little bit here, but just initial impressions. Where are you at, after having, gotten to where you're at in the game? Jeremy, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Yeah. So initially, I have to say, when I first got the game, downloaded it, I played it on midnight when it released, and my first thoughts were, "Oh no, this is really bad." Like
Yeah.
I think the between the glitchiness, the bugginess of it,
Hmm.
the frame rate is really the biggest gripe that I have
Yeah.
with the game. So initial impressions, I was like, I don't know if I like this. And then once you get through hold on. First of all, we are on like the 30th edition of a Pokemon core game. Not
Yes.
quite 30. We're almost there. But why did they choose to give us running as an ability from the beginning in 3 previous games? And then all of a sudden in this game, take it away and your mom has to give you running shoes before you can run. That's so stupid to me. So that took me, I griped about that to bed for like 20 minutes when that happened in the game. But initially, I was a little bit worried. But I think after about 2 days, the frame rate seemed to be keeping up a little bit better. I mostly play it
Mhm.
handheld, and handheld seems to be a
Okay.
little bit
Yeah.
different than docked. Docked has gotten a lot better that I've noticed in the last week.
Hmm.
And overall, I've had a lot of fun with this game. I think it's been a different take on Pokemon. I love the open world concept, and there's not like a cutscene to go into a building or like a new town. So I
Hmm.
love the open world idea of it. I think it's a nice direction for them to go. As far as things that I like about it versus what I don't like about it, the open world concept is what I like. I enjoy that your Pokemon can walk around with you for a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff. Character customization at the very beginning of the game was very much appreciated because that's literally all I care about
Yeah.
in most games is character customization. So that was a nice feature. I think they did that really well. What I don't love is that since Legends Arceus or Arceus, however you want to say it, just came out not too long ago,
Right.
and I thought that they made some really good decisions in Legends that I was excited to see carry through into these games,
Hmm.
and they decided not to do it. And it
Yes.
was confusing to me because I thought that they had set up some really solid game mechanics in Arceus
Yeah.
and not a lot of them carried over, and it was just a little disappointing in that regard. Overall
Absolutely.
though, like the game, I've had fun. I will probably end up getting Violet because I just typically get
Yeah.
both games. I don't know if I'm going to rush out and pay $60 for it though.
Yeah.
I'll put it on a wish list and wait for it to go on sale.
Yeah. I'd like to touch on 2 points before I pass it over to Justin because there's most of what you said I'm just gonna say I agree with, right? And so I kinda just wanna elaborate on 2 points, as far as my initial impressions. Because yeah, I played through the game, I was in the final 2 chapters of God of War: Ragnarok, which I was absolutely loving. I got Pokemon Violet, started playing that, and, was immediately frustrated by the experience, right? Just like the gameplay experience, because as you said, the technical gripes are not to be discounted. It is a bad, poorly performing, poorly optimized game. Arceus runs better. Justin and I have talked about this. Arceus looks the same, maybe even a little bit better, and runs significantly better. It doesn't make sense and it sucks.
Yeah.
That said, right, I really love the moment to moment gameplay. I'm having a really, really fun time with the setting. I like the sort of Spanish theme that they've got going on here. Big fan of the new designs. I think some of the strongest new Pokemon designs we've seen in a few generations, in my opinion. And then the other point that you made about the open world nature, I'm loving the 3 paths. I do have to complain about the signposting. The fact that there's no level scaling, right, I think is something that needs to be talked about a little bit. I don't think you can have a conversation about Scarlet Violet being an open world with 3 branching paths where there isn't really 3 branching paths that you can genuinely take it whatever order you want. Without level scaling, you will get crushed if you go out of the intended order, which if you look at maps of the level orders, it's head west, head east, go east again, then head back all the way west, way past where you were the first time. And it's, it doesn't make sense. And there's nothing that signposts it well. So I was really disappointed in that, right? And then the last little bit before I pass it over to you, Justin, because you talked about this with me a little while ago, is why can we not just throw a Pokeball to catch it anymore? Why would they take that away? The best addition from Arceus, letting you just hurl a Pokeball, catch the type that you were catching, and move on. Made it great for training Pokemon, made it great for breeding, made it great for shiny hunting. What they added an auto battle system, which is amazing, one of the best additions to the series ever, and then took away a bunch of stuff that worked really well in Arceus. So that's kind of where I'm at. Love the game, hate so much about it. It's it's a very conflicting experience. Justin, where are you at?
I agree with virtually everything that you guys just said. Looking back at even Sword and Shield, I mean the level of like outfit customization that you had in Sword and Shield, minus that huge backpack suitcase that you had to carry around all the time, was leagues better than what we have in Scarlet and Violet. I can't understand
Why can I not change out of my school uniform?
Awful.
Why?
It is the worst, and it's oh god, I hate it. So that's a big gripe. It's just we came so far. I thought we were like moving forward a little faster than we are, and yet we took these huge steps back from some of the previous generations. I wonder if the Pokemon Company is trying to do a little too much. When we got the Diamond and Pearl remakes, Arceus, and Scarlet and Violet, I think within a calendar year or pretty damn close to a calendar year. It might have been 13 months.
Not to mention Pokemon Unite released as well.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Pokemon Unite, like they're just trying to do a lot of things, and I wonder if they're overextended. But I'm gonna take this a little bit of a different direction from you guys, though. Let me start by saying this is the Pokemon game I think I've always wanted. Huge open world. A lot of my favorite Pokemon are back. The new designs are really good, but I don't love it. Like this should be a game I can lose myself in, and I don't love it. Yeah. And I don't know if it's because of the open world that I don't love it. Like I might be reacting to some open world burnout from a lot of other games.
Sure.
I really don't like in open world games that the narrative takes a huge backseat. I mean, Pokemon games aren't known for their narratives, right? They're not known for their stories, but there's so many different threads in this one that seem like it would have been better with a more straightforward narrative, and maybe some of the other branching paths outside of the gym route would have been better left for post game. I don't know.
Yes,
that's me. Like 5 gyms in.
I think that's a strong critique. I think that this game has the strongest narrative in a Pokemon game that we've had in the last 15% of the game. Up until then, I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good at all. And then suddenly the end game is like, so this is what we've been working towards, and it works, and it's great. Where was this for 80% of what I've been playing?
Literally the same reaction last night when I was playing it. I was like, what? This is like the last 15 minutes of gameplay. Like, why is this being revealed and done in this way?
Yeah.
When this is literally the whole point of the entire franchise.
Yes. I think so. You mentioned, Jeremy, really early on that one thing that Game Freak and the Pokemon Company have been attempting in recent generations is to give the players more to do after the game, right? And I think Sword and Shield, I think there's been I don't know if this is a reaction to Arceus or the Scarlet Violet, backlash because of the performance and everything, but I think there's been a critical reassessment of Sword and Shield in the Pokemon community of late, and people are realizing that game was very good. And I think a lot of that has to do with the 2 phenomenal expansions, right? Like, those were great and well-deserved, additions to the franchise. But as a result, we're seeing them taking this endgame focus to an extreme with Scarlet and Violet, where to me, the game starts when the game ends, and that is not acceptable, right? That's not a way to build a game.
What, you just,
I'm not going
to play 40, 60 hours before you get
exactly
to the good
and
part?
I'm the biggest apologist of a slow starting game you'll ever find. But it sucks because I truly think that the game got more interesting for me as I was coming to the end of the 3 routes, as everything sort of became when the routes reconverge at the end. I don't want to spoil anything for you, Justin, right? But just to say that's when the game gets interesting. And if I've already put 30 hours, if I've ever got 30 hours into a game and I'm only just now realizing this is what I wanted, that's a problem. Right?
Yeah.
It has its hooks in me now. I boot it up every night, catch a couple extra Pokemon, go do a little, end game thing. But I wish that they had managed to keep that energy from the beginning. And it just didn't, right? It just felt unfocused.
Yeah, I think one of the problems that Pokemon has is kind of what you mentioned earlier. Like, they're trying to do too many things at once for starters, and they're going into these games where they have, if you think about it, there's been a new gimmick every single game that has come out, or from something as simple as introducing a new type or double battles, triple battles, whatever, and then on to Mega Evolution and now the Gigantamax Pokemon and the raids that you can do, all of that stuff. Those are all really cool. We like those. We like doing those, but it also feels as if they're an afterthought sometimes, and they don't put a lot of thought into how it's going to work in or throughout the game. I think Sword and Shield, they actually did a really good job with it. And I thought when I played it, Sword and Shield was amazing to me.
Yes.
Even the wild area was the open world for me. I was like, this is it. That's fine. I'm good with this being an open world now. And it actually did a good job of scaling in the beginning, where when you were in the wild area, most of the wild area was lower level or whatever. And then after post game, they switched it to where everything was minimum level 50 or something in the wild area. And similarly to Arceus, playing that game, I thought people were really critical about the frame rate and the graphics and whenever it came out, because I saw it as this sort of period piece. It's meant to look like that Japanese watercolor sort of style and be more expressive. And I really loved Legends a lot. And I probably would rather replay that than I would right now in my current state with Scarlet, replay Scarlet because of the bugginess of it. I would replay it, but there are too many things that they need to fix and patch for it to be replayable for me. But mostly, I think Pokemon has an identity crisis with, do they want it to be just simple, casual, cozy, gotta catch them all? Or do they want to do these deep storylines where it's making your head spin, and they haven't really figured out how to mesh those very well over the years.
Yeah.
I would say one thing about, Jeremy, you were mentioning just now that after the updates, it's getting better. Surely it's getting a little better, but whenever it was first launched, it was damn near unplayable, even with a day one patch, right? In my current headspace about collecting video games, I think it's really important to have a physical cartridge. And if you went out and bought a physical cartridge of Scarlet and Violet right now and didn't have a reliable internet connection or a steady internet connection, like a lot of people around the country, right? There's a lot of places that are still dealing with dial-up or DSL. You really don't get a great experience with this game. You can't play. I mean, I guess it's technically playable what's on the cart, but it's so broken. It's an awful experience. I just think it's a crime. It's a literal crime. Somebody should go to jail.
I also don't know why they chose to switch up the way that the camera works in this game compared to Legends, because I thought that they had. So here's the things that I liked about Legends that I thought they were going to carry over. You already mentioned catching Pokemon in the overworld. That was so much easier. You could pick the ball. You got to craft the items. That was fun. And shiny hunting was a lot easier because it
Yes.
literally made a sound and you
Amazing.
could physically see them. In Scarlet and Violet, you kind of have to just know what the shiny looks like
Yes.
because there is no audible alert to let you know that one's popped. Literally today, right before we're recording this, I was playing and I caught a shiny Mankey. And the only reason I even saw it was because I was gliding over with my ride Pokemon and I saw like 5 of them. And
Mhm.
one of them looked a little bit darker, but it was in the shade. So I was like, well, I'll drop down and see what it looks like. And I battled it, and then I saw it was shiny. I will say that I'm thankful that they made it to where if you're auto battling and your Pokemon encounters a shiny Pokemon, it will not fight it. So it will give you this like, you know how if you do the auto battle, your Pokemon will run out and
Yeah.
it's on site and they're ready to take them out. But if you do that and the Pokemon is shiny and you don't recognize it as shiny, your Pokemon will do like the sweating thing and turn around. So
Yeah.
that's your first clue to like, oh, maybe I should see if this is a shiny.
I didn't realize that.
But
I've already missed a
yeah.
shiny, and I have no idea where it was or when it was. I mean, some of them are so subtle, right? Like you really have to know. Oh,
Yeah.
this
It's
shiny is
very
a
disappointing. As someone
yeah.
who doesn't know
Mhm.
enough about, the shiny colorations, especially because they've been pretty lazy with some of the shiny colorations in a few of these, that I don't think I would notice it. It's been a huge downgrade from Legends, a game that I also absolutely adore. It's my favorite Pokemon game. I think I love Legends more than just about any other game I've played, as someone who's played most of the series, right? And so, yeah, I mean, all of those changes that you've mentioned, really frustrating to see. Really frustrating to see. I
At
do.
least they did carry over remembering and deleting moves, and your
Yes.
Pokemon isn't limited to only knowing 4. I think that is the best decision that they ever put into a game based off if you're going to play the game with your same team of 6, but you're going to different gyms, you can switch up their move set right before going in if you need to. And that was one of the better mechanics that they added into the franchise.
Yeah. I think, I don't know the process. We've talked about this. Are they pulling themselves too thin? Do they have different design teams on each of these games? I don't really know the internal workings of Game Freak and Pokemon Company. I don't know where they're putting their development resources, but it feels like these were two teams that were passing some ideas across to each other, but largely working in independent spaces and not with much overlap. And if they had just combined into a single team, created these games 1 year apart, we'd have had two very solid, very good Pokemon games. Instead, we got two pretty decent Pokemon games with good new changes to the franchise that each have their own, lacks. That could have been shored up with just a little more input, a slightly larger team, a little more time in the out. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
That's kind of where, yeah.
honestly, I would have been happy with more time with Diamond and Pearl, those remakes, because
Mm-hmm.
it seemed like those came out in like November or December, and then Legends was January or February. It was just so
Mhm.
quick. Like we should have gotten
Mm-hmm.
Arceus right now, and then Scarlet and Violet fixed holiday next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have much rather them say, "Oh, we're going to delay the release of this because we have things to work on," versus releasing the game knowing it's bad and then just banking on your entire franchise knowing that they're going to play it anyway because they're such loyal fans. We're such loyal fans. But that's why Pokemon keeps releasing them as
Yes.
broken games because they know that people are going to buy it. Like they had already outsold their pre-order goals way in advance before this game even came out. And
Mm-hmm.
the same thing happened whenever they announced Diamond and Pearl. Like the remakes were nice, and I love the little chibi design that they did. It kind of felt like a Link to the Past,
Yeah.
or no, not a Link to the Past, Link's Awakening sort of
Oh yeah.
style. But
Mm-hmm.
even then, those two games wildly different in terms of the quality that we saw in the colors, the textures, all of that. Still good. But what I want Pokemon to do is find all of these people that are huge fans of the game that make their own fan trailers that are like,
Yeah.
this is what the game should be, and hire them because they
Mhm.
made. There's one for Diamond and Pearl that is like Legends Arceus, like what we thought it was going to be, or like I don't know, Legends Johto or something, and they are so good. And I just don't know why they can't. The internet exists. Like track them down and find them and hire them.
Yeah. Yeah, we're in a weird place with the Pokemon franchise overall. I think there needs to be a cooldown year before we hear anything else. I think we need to step away for a year, give us a 2 or 3 year development cycle on the next game. Let's just take some time, because I hate that I've been saying this since Sword and Shield, which is, this is a great proof of concept for a strong Pokemon game. Arceus, this is a great proof of Scarlet Violet. It's like, why do I have to keep saying this if they're right there each time? And then they decide either a radical reinvention or to make baffling decisions on what to change, right? And there's always some good stuff, right? Like, I don't want to end this on fully being down on it. I think that, for example, the online component is getting there. I really enjoy traveling around the online world now with other people. The fact that you guys can travel together, if you have different generations and you're traveling in the same area, you can see exclusive Pokemon, right? So like, if I were in an online lobby with you guys, we could be traveling in the same area. As long as we're within proximity, you could spawn my, version uniques. I could spawn your version uniques and catch them, right? And you can see each other battling on the field, which is cool. You can go off and do your own thing. One player can go do a gym battle while the other one's working on, the Elite Four. All of that is available, and it's pretty seamless, though frustrating as it always is. Nintendo puts extra steps that shouldn't be there, right? They make it so if one player leaves, the whole instance drops, and there's little things that's just like, why are these still issues we're dealing with in a company that has all of this money and all of these resources? But that said, a huge jump from Sword and Shield Online, right? We're seeing some fun stuff. I still want the ability to, when I'm battling at a gym, why can't, right, my companion watch from the sidelines? Watch me do the gym battle. Let's, let them be involved in those processes. If there's a duel battle in the story, why can't my companion, be there instead of Arvin or whatever, right? Like, give me these
cool
options,
too.
And then I do think we need to talk about Terra battles, right? As a concept,
do we have to?
As a concept, I think terastallizing is one of the coolest additions they've made to Pokemon, because anything that allows you to change type creates some really cool competitive matchup, possibilities. And I think that's really cool. Being able to take a water Pokemon and then mid-battle terastallize it into an electric type, right? And totally bamboozle your opponent. Great. Love it, right? The raids themselves, again, the online I think generally is good. The raids are one of the worst experiences in gaming I have ever experienced. And some exclusive Pokemon are in those raids. We've got Charizard coming in a week. And you expect me to believe that that's going to work well when, I don't know, how much have you guys done the raids? Have you dipped much of a toe in them?
I have done some of the online raids, but earlier in the week, I would have said that they were a lot better and that the raids were better than Sword and Shield, because in Sword and Shield, you would go to select a raid to join, and then it would say communication lost or whatever.
Yep.
It wasn't as bad in the earlier week that this game came out, but now that more people have the game and more people are playing, I think it's still a struggle to get connected to a raid. And with it only being 4 people, it makes it a little bit of a challenge to get into. Like, I feel like they could bump it up to easily 8 people in a raid. Like, typically, most online PvP games are 4v4 or 5v5. So I know that we're not all actively battling each other in that moment, but it's essentially the same thing. I haven't had as many connection drops, I will say, or unable to join the terror raids. I do enjoy what you said about sort of keeping your opponent on their toes and competitive battling, like making sure that you're paying attention to what they terastallize into. My gripe with it is I want them to figure out their gimmick and what is going to sell the game long term, and just pick one. Like, if it's megas, keep it at megas. If it's Gigantamax, keep it at that. If it's terastallize, keep it at that. But all I see is like Swarovski crystals, and it looks so weird. For some of them, they look cool, but I don't know. They look funny. It's almost like at this point, I'm gonna do it regardless. But I haven't been banking on it. Like I terrestrialize it usually once per battle per gym or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like that if you're like say you're a dragon type and you can terrestrialize from being a dragon type to a poison type. You're
Yeah.
immediately going to have a better coverage against your fairy type opponent or something. And that's neat. But again, I just want them to pick something, stick with it, and just focus on that. But I don't think they will. But
Yeah. From
Unless
a
I've
design
missed-
perspective, it's but go ahead,
Yeah,
Justin.
I agree. Unless I've missed something, I'm really disappointed in the type changes for some of the Pokemon. Like especially the Pokemon that I've used. Like the types don't even change whenever I terrestrialize or whatever it's called.
Right, right.
Like I have an electric and it stays an electric. Okay, well, what was the purpose in doing that?
Yeah. It's
well, it does
it's
give
a
them a
defaulted,
boost. So
Yeah, they get a little bit of a boost. You're right.
but it also defaults to their normal type from what I understand. But what you can do is you can catch rare terrestrialized Pokemon that have a different type. Raids will also give you different type terrestrializations. And if you get enough fragments, you can change your Pokemon's type to a different type. So you can customize your party in this way, but it's another end game system that isn't well articulated to players. It's a competitive and end game system that is poorly articulated, I think.
And it's a lot of grinding too,
Yes.
because to change your Pokemon's type, you need 50 of one Terra type shards, I believe.
30 or 50, yeah, and they're rare.
It's a lot.
Yeah. So it's to encourage you to do the raids, right? Which, as I was saying, I don't know if you guys have spent much. I spent the last weekend doing raids all of Saturday. So I spent about 6 hours just raiding on Saturday just to kind of get a feel for it. In that 6 hours, I would say 40% of the time I would have a minimum of a 20 to 30 second window where I could do nothing, where someone hit the Pokemon so hard that it goes through its preset rotation of debuffing, buffing, putting up a shield, and then having that shield slowly peter away, skipping my turn 2 or 3 times before I finally got to do something again. Or what would happen was you would go into a battle, someone would bring in a type that was weak to it. Because of the lag and the disconnect, they would get knocked out 2-3 times before you had your turn to go. And then you've lost the raid and you're kicked back out. And then the other 20-30%, we would kill the raid successfully, get the new Pokemon. I do like that they are 100% catch rate on raids. You kill them, 100% catch rate, even with a basic Pokeball. I don't have to worry about, missing out on, the terrestrialized Pokemon that I got. And I like that, like I said, it allows for some really fun, quick team building because you can get, at I think 5-star raids, you start to get level 75 Pokemon that have unique Terra types, which make for really nice type advantages and min-maxing your teams for competitive play or late game gyms and stuff, and that's really cool. But it plays horribly. It's I would recommend you guys dive into those raids a little bit and feel the frame rate drops, the lag, the disconnect.
Oh, yeah.
It is atrocious. If you think the base game plays poorly, those raids are just on another level of bad. And it sucks because I think conceptually they're quite cool. Implementation, again, as we've been saying, I think this whole episode, lacking, right? Across the board, just not great.
Well, it's like you said earlier, like they get there almost every time where they almost have it down to where with Sword and Shield, I was like, okay, future franchises Pokemon, this is what we want. This is going to be good. It'll only get better. And then they're like, okay, here's Legends Arceus. And it's completely different. And it's not in any way the same as Sword and Shield. And they were like, okay, well, maybe this will be the future of the game. And then they throw out Scarlet and Violet, and it's an entirely different way to play the game. I don't know if they know this, but Elder Scrolls has released Skyrim over the past however many years. a dozen different times, and they've changed nothing. And
Yep.
people continue to buy this game. I myself have bought that game 4 times.
Yeah.
And thankfully, now that Elder Scrolls Online exists, and I just decided to play that, I don't ever have to buy Skyrim again. But they had the open world right, and
Yep.
they knew what they were trying to accomplish. Pokemon, it goes back to they're trying to do too many things.
Yeah.
And they need to stay with the core gameplay model of the gyms and catching them in the generation, catching all the new Pokemon. The only thing that I wish that they would do better, they do a really good job of each generation making it easier for newer players to play the game and
Yes.
catch up really quickly with the raids, getting the experience candies, or they tell you what the type matchups are. And there's almost over 1,000 Pokemon now. Like, my brain is dedicated to knowing all of them, but sometimes I'm going to forget something. So I enjoy that aspect. The only thing that I want them to add in is I don't want to be a 10-year-old every time I start these
Yeah.
games. Let me have
Yeah.
a beard, or let me, be like a new research assistant that's coming in to help the professor fill up. Like, easily they could do that. Like,
Yeah.
make it a 10-year-old or an adult. And I think that would open up a lot more people to come back to the games if they've left, or attract newer people.
Yeah, I think those are all fair points. Justin, we're going to kind of wrap up here. I think we've pretty much got our grievances out. We've talked about what we like, what we dislike. Final thoughts on the game before we wrap up with our last little bit here.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we can all give it a rating, like 1 to 10, 10 being just outstanding, 1, not. I'll go first and let you guys think about it. But final thoughts. I think it's a very ambitious game. Matthew, something you said earlier really struck a chord with me. Like, we can't keep saying that these games are proof of concepts for Game Freak. Like, that's not an excuse for this game. I think they set their sights really high, and they just didn't deliver. I think in a 6 months or a year, this is going to be a really solid game. It might be the greatest Pokemon game ever, but it's got a ways to go. And for me, right now, as it sits, I'm giving it a 6.5.
Yeah. It's a 4 out of 10 that I love, like a 9 out of 10. That's where I'm at.
That's a good way to put it.
That's my opinion on Scarlet Violet.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I was going to say a 6 for overall gameplay for me as well, because it checks a lot of boxes, but it has a lot of work to do. And 6 is being generous, because I'm a longtime fan. Like, my original thought was like a 5, but I think that if they can nail down some of those glitches and the bugs and work on the frame rate, and potentially I've already noticed some areas that are sort of like on the map where there could be expansions.
Yeah.
If they do some really solid expansions, I could see it being a longer play style kind of game. But if they don't work on that, then I don't know. I might just replay Legends.
Okay. So that brings me to my final question before we get to our game recommendations of the week. I'm going to kind of phrase this as, with our complaints about the way that Game Freak has spread itself thin and gone in seemingly 3 different directions this console generation, which generation or which direction do we want the next Pokemon game, right? Because if there's been 3 games that are almost there but not quite it, which of the 3 do we want to see get there? Do we want to see a Sword and Shield follow-up that nails what Sword and Shield tried to do, a Legends Arceus 2 that really just solidifies Arceus as the proof of concept, or do we want the sequel of Scarlet and Violet that gives us what they promised in an open world game? Where do you fall of those 3 lines? Because I do think that they're 3 completely different directions, and Game Freak needs to pick one and stick to it at this point. If I'm choosing, it's Arceus. I think it's the best of the 3. And I think if they make it more open world like Scarlet and Violet, but keep most of what I loved about that game, that's a perfect Pokemon to me. So that's where I'm landing on that. Pass it over to
I would
Jeremy.
be right there with you. I think that I would say, in terms of the 3, Legends, Sword and Shield, and Scarlet Violet, that would be my order of where I would like to see them go. And in an ideal world, mash them all together and take the best parts of each and make a new game. But then that gets us back to a fourth edition of this is a great starter concept for. So I don't want to keep doing that. So I would say Arceus as well.
Yeah. Justin, where are you at?
Yeah, well, I've got a little bit of a twist on my answer, but the easy answer is Arceus. Arceus, but truly open world, not open zone. Like if it's open world like this game is, I think that game is a 10 out of 10. But the other thing I want to see them do is go back to the early games and give me more Diamond and Pearl type remakes. Like I really want to go back to Johto. I think Johto.
Oh my god, yeah.
Like, wouldn't that be awesome? And I don't want to do it in a Let's Go. I mean, Let's Go, Pikachu, and Eevee were fine, but I don't
let's
want
do
to
it
play
in a
again.
Legends. Let's get a Johto Legends. Let's get in there. You know, that's what I think. That's kind of, to me, that's the other thing is they can pull on the nostalgia that people have for the franchise with Legends as the template. And I think, again, it was the closest to a successful proof of concept of the three that we've seen so far this generation. Plus, gameplay wise, I just like a lot more of what I saw in that than what I've been seeing in Scarlet and Violet. And, you know, again, a game that I love like a 9 out of 10. I played it straight through. I didn't really stop playing anything else. It's just there's a lot I hated about it, and that sucks, right?
Yeah.
I think that pretty much covers our conversation for Scarlet and Violet. You know, before we go, every week we like to do a game recommendations of the week. In recent weeks, we've decided, you know, every console, every, you know, developer is fair game. So, Jeremy, since you're the guest, what are you playing lately or excited to play soon that you would want to recommend to our listeners?
When I'm not playing Pokemon, I'm typically playing Elder Scrolls Online, and I have the expansion pass, the monthly like premium version of that. I know it's not for everybody, but the game that I'm most looking forward to playing when it comes out is Hogwarts Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be really cool. It looks like they have pushed it enough to where they are nailing down the actual storyline and gameplay. So that's on my watch list is Hogwarts Legacy.
Yeah. I will say, as someone who was an early adopter of Elder Scrolls Online, I don't play anymore. I play Final Fantasy 14 now. That's my MMO Poison at the moment. But Elder Scrolls Online, a great game. I can definitely vouch for that as well as someone who's played the franchise, and you know, it jumps back in every now and then to just kind of check it out. A game that does level scaling better than just about anyone as well, I will say, right? The way that they allow you to kind of just go through the story in the way that you want. That is, as far as I can tell, the premier open world experience nowadays, the way that they've adjusted that game. So, Justin, how about you? Where are we at?
8 characters.
Yes.
You can make 8 characters from the start. So,
which is nice.
I'm sold.
Yeah, it's a great game. If you've never checked it out and you're into MMOs, I would recommend it. And if you like Elder Scrolls lore, I think it does a really nice job there as well. So, Justin, where are you at?
I'm all caught up in World Cup fever right now. So whenever FIFA 23 went on sale for $30, I grabbed it. It's got a brand new engine or an updated engine this year. It plays really, really well. It's much more responsive. I haven't played since like maybe FIFA 19 on the Switch. I got the 23 for my PlayStation 5, but it's much more responsive. The shots feel better. I really like everything about this game. They've taken out some of the like fluffy story stuff that some of the previous games have had. But again, I'm caught up in World Cup fever right now, so I can't really play anything else but soccer or Pokemon.
Nice. Well, not personally a fan of sports games myself, but I do know that there is a rabid fan base for FIFA out there. And hey, you know, if you're into those, you know, yearly iterations, I hear it's not a bad entry in the franchise. So I'm going to go with something that is a risky recommendation because I don't know how well this will be received. I don't know what to expect for sure, but anyone who knows me or who's listened to the pod knows that there's a little game coming out on Thursday called Romancing Saga Minstrel Song Remastered, an old school hard as nails JRPG from Square Enix and their Saga group that I am absolutely over the moon excited about. I will be jumping into that on Thursday, doing a little bit of streaming of that over on my Twitch channel. So if you want to check that out, feel free to jump over there and give a look. Put a link in the show notes for that. But we're going to be talking, I believe, Justin, if I recall correctly, we've got our Game of the Year show coming up in a week or two, as well as our 2023 gaming resolutions episode. So if you are a listener to the pod, if you've interacted with us on Twitter or the Nintendo Watcher website, please hit us up with your games of the year. Hit us up with your resolutions for next year. We want to kind of get the community involved in this, our little group of listeners and friends out there. Tell us what you've been playing in 2022, what you're looking forward to in 2023, games that are on the release schedule, or just resolutions you have for your gaming lifestyle, and hit us up with those, either on Twitter or drop us a line over on Nintendo Watcher. We'd love to hear from you guys, because I think that's where we're headed in the next couple of weeks. Do I have that right, Justin?
Yep, that's it. I'm
Excellent,
really
excellent.
excited about that. I've honestly, I thought 22 was going to be pretty easy to pick a game of the year. I'm struggling a little bit.
It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare year. I'm not, not to tip my hand, but I'm very excited for that conversation. Jeremy, as the guest, where can people find you? What should they be looking out for as we head on out of this episode?
Yeah, I mean, my most active social media right now is probably TikTok and Instagram. So you can find me pretty much anywhere at _ Jeremy Rivers. And if it's not that, it's something along the lines of Jeremy Rivers 91. TikTok is Jeremy Rivers 91, and Instagram and Twitter are both _ Jeremy Rivers.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us today. We had a blast talking Pokemon Scarlet, Violet, and the rest of the series. A disappointing game, but one that I think is near and dear to each of us for different reasons. Justin, anything else to take us out for the episode, or is that about wrap it up?
That about wraps it up. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching if you're on YouTube. And thanks for subscribing. If you're not subscribed already, please hit that button for us. And with that, Jeremy, thanks for coming on. Matthew, always good to see you, man.
Pleasure as always.
Thank you so much.
Later, everyone.